Hi, Dr. Vijay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. How are you?
Oh, so nice to see you again.
It's a pleasure.
It's been a few months, hasn't it?
That's right.
Did you manage to listen to the podcast by any chance?
Yes, I did.
It's very well received, full of information and knowledge.
That's great.
Good. So, it is 8 o'clock, so we can start. So, to
Sure.
those tuning in now, and of course those that will listen back on Instagram and YouTube, where this episode will be uploaded afterwards. I welcome you to episode 13 of Homeopathic Voices from Around the World with me, Atik Ahmad Bhatti, who also hosts, as you know, I host the the Homeopathy Health podcast on UK Health Radio. Now, I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Vijay Vaishnav from California to today's episode. Dr. Vijay was actually originally on my Homeopathy Health podcast, and that was a sheer delight in itself. So I welcome you back. Thank you so much. I think there might be some slight connection problems. Okay, I'm trying to connect you again. There we are. We momentarily lost connection.
I cannot see you actually. So is that how it's supposed to be?
No, I'm here.
Okay. I don't see you on my screen.
Ah, okay. Might be the connection, might be a Wi-Fi problem, or
Okay. No problem.
hopefully it will improve.
Sure.
Do you want to reconnect? Maybe that will help.
Maybe you can try that.
Okay.
Let me do that.
I'm going to stay online. I'll wait for you.
Sure.
Okay. So we had a we had a slight connection problem. Oh, Instagramming, but hey, it's all good. These things happen. Right. Just going to go live again. This episode, when it's actually uploaded on YouTube, like I said in the previous ones, we'll be able to edit this bit out. Welcome back, Dr. Vijay Vaishnav. So to start with, how have you been?
I've been in great health. Thank you very much. How about you?
Good.
How's the weather?
The weather is cold and it's very gloomy because it gets dark around 4 p.m. So that's not very helpful. But otherwise, it's been very, very busy indeed.
So you got lycopodium weather, 4 p.m. aggravation.
It's not an aggravation. Not an aggravation. It's more like thinking, when is March going to arrive? Because
yeah.
March is such a beautiful time, isn't it? It's the start of spring.
That's true.
And how is the weather over there, by the way?
California is okay. It has been a bit cold, and we are expecting a storm tomorrow.
Ooh.
But otherwise, it's not so bad. Not like UK.
Which part of California are you in?
I'm closer to San Francisco.
Oh, lovely. I remember many moons ago, I was in San Francisco and I walked the bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge. And then I was at a conference actually, and I took time out to go to what's that place called? Alcatraz. And I took a boat, and it was raining, and it wasn't very pleasant, but we got there, and I was thrilled. I mean, that was very odd if you think about it today, because I was thrilled going to an Alcatraz, which is a prison. So I don't know what that means. but it was empty, so it was nice.
And San Francisco is the city where Boriki was from, so there's a lot of connection with homeopathy. We still do have some institutions that have lots of old articles from homeopathic journals in San Francisco and some of the medical universities and libraries.
Is there any is there any place where there is homage to Boiraki himself?
No, not really.
Maybe one day soon.
Mm-hmm.
How have you been as far as teaching is concerned? Have you been quite busy?
Yeah, lots of webinars going on. We
Good.
also have the California Homeopathic Medical Society, where my wife and I are board members, and we organize quite a few things. So we are working on a lunch and learn project where once a month we plan to speak to the homeopathic fraternity in California about homeopathy. Maybe share some of our cases or talk about different aspects of homeopathy. So that's coming up soon.
Oh, wonderful. That's so good. Now, I wanted to ask you actually on today's episode about remedy relationships. Now, in the podcast, you really shared some valuable insights into materia medica, specifically, of course, remedies and their relationships, not only just to one another, but the human body, blood vessels, and so forth, and organs, etc. So it would be nice to carry that subject on if you could select some remedies and really just share your knowledge.
So I believe in practical homeopathy. So whatever you speak about should be of use in practice, and whoever listens to you really gets some information and can use that in practice. So I'm going to talk about, let's say, cough, for example, whether it's an old person or a young kid who comes to you with a cough. The basic way in which I look at any of the homeopathic materia medica remedies or drugs is to try and understand why do those symptoms happen. Why is it that a particular symptom is seen in this particular remedy, and then understand the remedy. For me, every remedy should be like a friend. I should know everything about my friend, what the friend likes, dislikes, what are the quirks, what is the emotional state, how I can needle that person and get him to react. So similarly, if you can do that with each of your homeopathic remedies, it makes it easy for you to practice. And let's take the example of cough. One of the biggest mistakes that I've seen many homeopaths, my students, my colleagues back home in India, as well as people I've interacted with here, is that when they have a person who comes to them with a cough which is loose, moist, and rattling, every time the child or the person coughs, they can hear some loose phlegm in the chest. The first thought that comes in their mind is antimonium tartaricum, because we've been taught as students that whenever there's a rattling cough, when the child cannot expectorate, or when the old person seems to be finding it difficult to expectorate, there's a lot of collection of mucus in the chest. Antim tart is one of the remedies. Now, I feel that is a very wrong approach, because if you also read the homeopathic materia medica, it says antimonium tartaricum is for the death rattle. So none of these people who are coming to your clinic or to your office or to your outpatient department are dying. If they walk to your clinic, they're not dying. So then that death rattle that you are hearing is not really a death rattle, it's just a collection of secretions. Antimonium tartaricum is for a person who has turned blue, has become very drowsy, is at the end stage of respiratory failure. They become irritable. All these are symptoms that you see in the homeopathic material. A child is very irritable, cannot bear to be touched, cannot bear to be looked at. But why is it happening? That's the question I ask. Why does an antim tart patient have these symptoms? So let's go back to the sphere of action of antimonium tartaricum. The action is on what was at one time called the pneumogastric nerve. So the pneumo stands for lung, gastric is for stomach. So this was a nerve that had an affinity, or it innervates both the stomach as well as the respiratory tract, the lungs. Nowadays, this nerve is called the vagus nerve in modern terminology. So what does it do to the vagus nerve? It actually causes a depression of the vagus nerve. And the child or the person who's coughing, because of the depression of the vagus nerve, is not able to expectorate. There's a lot of secretion that collects, but they don't have the power to throw it out. And so they start drowning in their own secretions. Now, if you look at medical physiology, when this happens, the carbon dioxide content in the blood starts rising. We get a state that is called hypercapnia. And hypercapnia is not good for the body, especially when the levels rise to a point where they cross the blood-brain barrier. So the brain has a barrier. It doesn't allow all toxins to enter. And that blood-brain barrier can only be breached when the levels of the toxins go very high. So when the carbon dioxide content of the blood starts rising and the carbon dioxide circulates in the brain, then they become drowsy and they become very irritable. Irritability is an indication that there is hypercapnia in respiratory patients. So this is the state in which you will find an antimonium tartaricum patient. I would rather think of other homeopathic remedies having similar symptoms, but they are not in the state where they are dying. So if a person has come to you to your office, obviously he's not going to be a dead man walking. He's coming to you with a cough. He's got maybe a pneumonia or a bronchitis. I would first think of the homeopathic remedy Ipecac or Ipecacuanha. The sphere of action of Ipecacuanha is just like antimonium tartaricum on the pneumogastric nerve or the vagus nerve. And that is why, because of its action on the stomach, the vagus, the gastric nerve, pneumo and gastric, you have such a lot of nausea and retching in Ipecac. So with every symptom, you will find nausea and retching becomes a concomitant in Ipecacuanha. They also have a tendency to spasms. And that's because in case of Ipecac, there's an irritability of the vagus nerve. In case of antimonium tartum, there's a depression of the vagus nerve. So antim tart comes later in the later stages of a respiratory problem. Ipecacuanha will come in the initial stage. So children with capillary bronchitis, or those who come with bronchiolitis, or old people with bronchitis, you could think of Ipecac first, mainly because there's initially an irritation, there's a spasm, they get bronchospasms, they cannot breathe, they might even turn blue in the face sometimes, or they turn red in the face, and they start retching. And because the stomach is not actually inflamed, it's just that the nerve that's connected to the stomach is irritating it, they keep vomiting, they keep retching, and they're not relieved by vomiting. Antimonium tartaricum also has a lot of vomiting, and they're always better by vomiting. So if a mother comes to you with a child and says, my child was doing well, but now the cough seems to have become less, but I still feel there's something wrong, that's a bad sign. That means from a stage of irritation of the vagus nerve, the person has gone into a stage of a depression of the vagus nerve. So the person is deteriorating. You need to look at what you need to give at that point of time. So that's the time when Ipecac might turn into an antim-tart patient. Now, talking about relationship of remedies, Ipecacuanha is a plant. It grows best in soil which is rich in copper. And there is a biological relationship with Cuprum metallicum. So both Ipecac and Cuprum metallicum will have a lot of spasms. So you get spasms in the chest, Ipecac will have spasms in the stomach, and Ipecac will have such a lot of retching. They can also get convulsions. They go red or blue in the face. So this is a biological relationship. So sometimes an Ipecac patient or a person who needs Ipecac might go towards the Cuprum metallicum stage. And we must remember that the mineral remedy is always deeper acting than the plant remedy. So after Ipecac, the mineral Cuprum met might be useful. Now, antim tart and Ipecac are not the only two remedies for rattling in the cough. I would think of if a person comes to me with rattling in the chest, if it's an old man, Berita carb is a very important remedy for old people who have a lot of rattling in the chest. They have difficulty in bringing it out. And you might find that they also have other changes like atherosclerosis. So I'm talking about how you can look at homeopathic remedies with pathology, with what is going on within the body. Antim-tart is a drug that has got 3 a.m. aggravation. Most complaints are worse at 3 in the morning. They start coughing, or they are worse at that time. They become more irritable at that time. And you will find that there are other remedies that are also worse at 3 in the morning. One of them is ammoniacum carbonicum, or ammon carb. So ammon carb has a 3 a.m. aggravation. How do we differentiate that from our antimonium tartaricum? Now, in respiratory medicine, you have something called COPD, or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. There are two forms of COPDs. One is chronic bronchitis and the other is emphysema. So antimonium tartaricum is the drug for chronic bronchitis because they turn blue in the face, they have chronic cough, and they are finally going into what is called right-sided cardiac failure, and they might end up with a lot of secretions and collections in the lungs. On the other hand, your ammon carb is a drug for emphysema, where there's a hyperinflation of the lungs and the emphysema. They are pink puffers. So they start puffing and they turn pink in the face, while our antimonium tartaricum are blue bloaters. They are blue and they bloat up. They get collected with fluid. Now, 3 a.m. in the morning, they have easy expectoration in ammon carb, while antim tart has very difficult and scanty expectoration. So you might find that ammon carb might be the drug with a child who comes with early morning aggravation, with a lot of chest congestion and rattling, but they bring it out very easily, and they don't seem to show that much of irritability that you see in antimonium tartaricum. Plus, you'll find ammon carb has got nasal obstructions. They have more of nose blocks, and you find again this is early in the morning, or as soon as they wake up, they have sneezing attacks like nux vomica. So antim tart and ammon carb have 3 a.m. aggravation. Most of the the Cali group, will have 3 in the morning aggravation. And one of the Calis that is known for its rattling in the chest is Cali self. So instead of giving antim tart for a person who has rattling, you could even think of Cali sulfuricum, which has got a lot of rattling. They bring up a large amount of yellowish expectoration. And antimonium tartaricum is thirstless, while Cali self can be very thirsty. And you'll find that Cali sulf is also known as the biochemic pulsatilla because it's a tissue remedy that has symptoms very similar to pulsatilla. But pulsatilla is thirstless and Cali sulf will be extremely thirsty. The other remedy that I would think of is hepar sulfuricum or hepar sulf. Hepar sulf also has got cough, which starts initially as a dry sounding cough. Later, you might find that they start having a lot of hoarse barking coughs, and then there's a collection of secretions, and then they have a loose, moist, rattling cough. The cough of hepar sulf is more worse at night when they are about to sleep, and again early morning when they wake up. So you don't have that classic 3 a.m. aggravation, but that's another drug which has got such a lot of rattling in the chest, but we miss it because we only concentrate on what was taught to us and what was drilled into our head, that antim tart is a drug for the rattling cough. Bromium. Bromium is another remedy that we should think of when a person comes with a lot of loose, rattling sounds. But the peculiarity of bromium is that the sound is heard coming from the throat. The sphere of action of bromium is mainly the larynx, the epiglottis, and the upper respiratory tract. So there's a lot of collection of secretions there. And when they cough, you can hear loose sounds coming more from the chest and not really from the lungs. So just the same symptom, you have different remedies that you can think of. And if you don't want to make mistakes in prescribing or don't want to have a zigzag cure because you made a mistake, then you go to the next remedy and then you find that didn't help and you keep searching for other remedies. It's better to differentiate before you jump into making your prescription. Now, bromium, for example, there's one more thing that is very important from the relationship point of view, because people have this idea that when a person takes homeopathic treatment, they should stop coffee, they should stop onions, they should stop garlic, and sometimes some of the physicians or doctors also give a blanket ban. As long as you're on homeopathy, do not take coffee, do not eat anything that contains garlic or onions. In case of bromium, salt inhibits the action. If you read Boriki's Materia Medica, he writes, salt inhibits the action of bromium. So you also need to be aware, not just about the remedy itself, how it is related to other remedies, and also whether there is any relation with the naturally occurring substances or things that are part of our diet. So bromium is a remedy where whenever you give bromium, you should also ask the person to avoid salt if possible throughout the time of treatment, or at least around the time of the dosage, they should avoid salt. Phytolacca. Phytolacca is another drug which has got an affinity for the throat. And there again you find milk and salt antidoted. So those who are on phytolacca, if they drink a lot of milk or they have a lot of salty food, the efficacy of the remedy might be affected. So you need to be aware of a lot of other things, not just the remedy itself, and or just learn the symptoms. Try to understand the remedy. So this is just one simple example of how you can differentiate remedies and what is the relationship between remedies. Sometimes, as I said, the relationship could be biological, like in case of Ipecac and Cuprum metallicum. There are other remedies that have this biological relationship, like pulsatilla and silica, because the plant pulsatilla grows best in sandy soil. So it has absorbed quite a few characteristics of silica. And you find that the natural follower of pulsatilla is silica. You have cinchona and ferrum metallicum. Cinchona is a plant, ferrum metallicum is a mineral again, or a metal, and both are very important for anemias. And you should think of cinchona as a drug that you can start with when a person has had a history of a loss of blood, and later on you might find that ferrum metallicum might take over and continue with the action of this remedy. Same with you have certain other minerals and plants that are analogous to each other, and they are very important for us because they are the common remedies that we use in practice. For example, phosphorus. The acute of phosphorus is allium cepa. Both have got descending colds. Both have got a tendency for the larynx to be affected, and both can end up getting a pneumonia. But usually you find that phosphorus is a deeper acting remedy, and you can follow up a person who has acute colds, who has now developed lung infections with phosphorus. Now, in case of a disease like tuberculosis, which is very common in the developing countries, phosphorus is a drug that you do not give, even though it appears to be constitutionally indicated in a tuberculosis patient, because sometimes it reactivates, it causes hemorrhage, they get a lot of hemoptysis. So at that time, you need to think of a remedy which is from the plant kingdom, which is not as deep in its action, but still has similar symptoms. And that's when you would think of Sanguinaria canadensis. That is the vegetable analog of phosphorus in this particular disease. You have maccarb and chamomilla. Chamomilla is the remedy for, we all think of it only for dentition, but we have lots of other symptoms like the menstrual symptoms of chamomilla, dark menses, clotted. That's the same with platina. Then you have the emotional state, which is similar. Sorry, that's the same as maccarb. Even the emotional state, you will find that maccarb usually is complementary to silica. So you have to look at the remedy and see how it is related to the other remedies, and that might help you in your practice, because when you give an acute remedy and you're lost, either you look for those remedies that are known to be constitutionally following each other, or you have to then just prescribe on again the new set of symptoms that appear after the acute symptoms are gone. So that's one way of looking at the relationship of remedies.
You know, you mentioned about the relationship and then following on, for example, from a plant remedy with a relationship to a mineral remedy.
Mm-hmm.
But where you've just ended with this example that sometimes a patient comes presenting a new complaint altogether, maybe because of the layers that we're opening up. What's the approach at that time, Amy? What's your take on that?
So if the patient seems to be still doing well, the symptoms, the acute symptoms are gone, that's the time when you'll usually find the most prominent constitutional symptoms appearing at the end of an acute illness. So that's the time you would be able to get the best scope of finding the constitutional remedy. And you'll find that if your acute remedy was correct, the patient feels much better, but you find that now the other symptoms that were hidden seem to now the layers have, as you said, have been opened up and the symptoms become more prominent. So that's the time you should really look at studying the constitutional symptoms again. Maybe take a quick look at all the symptoms, see what was missed out in the previous history, and then prescribe the constitutional remedy. And if you cannot find something, then you might take recourse to what is known as the remedy that follows the acute remedy, like belladonna is followed by calcarea carb, Rustox is followed by calcarea carb, and so on.
You know, it's interesting because you're talking about here you're talking about coughs, and we ended up really very much here. It makes me think of obviously when one does get ill, generally ENT, you know, ear, nose, and throat, and nowadays certainly as far as I'm concerned, so many patients are coming with issues with their nose, and this is not necessarily because they have polyps, but just the fact that you know they have either a very dry nose, very blocked nose, or it alternates. Even the left and right nostrils sometimes alternate. You know, one nostril is open, the other one is blocked. They lie down, the nose becomes blocked. Sometimes they wake up and without a subadilla experience, for example, the nose is still watering even after profuse episodes of sneezing. So do share your wisdom on that and some remedies there that will help the listeners.
So when you're looking at acute coryza or people coming with allergies, for example, and the allergies will affect the ears, the nose, as well as the ears, and sometimes they get almost everything happening at the same time. When you're looking at acute prescriptions, you then do not really need to worry about at that point of time making a constitutional prescription, because sometimes the constitutional remedy might even make it worse because it causes an upheaval of the vital force when the person is already very sensitive and waiting for the right remedy. So, for example, as an aside, natromure constitutions, when they come with acute headaches, I think it was Margaret Tyler or Dorothy Shefford, one of them have mentioned that you should never give natromure to a person who comes with an acute headache just because that is the constitution. Give a superficial remedy that is similar to it, and most often that turns out to be bryonia. So give bryonia, take care of the acute state, and then go back to the natromure as a constitutional. So sometimes when you have these acute allergic reactions, look at the symptoms and think of prescribing using different strategies. Think of prescribing on the location. Think of prescribing on the sensations. Think of prescribing on the basis of modalities. For example, location. If the person has a lot of itching of the eyes with a lot of watering of the eyes and they are constantly rubbing the eyes and itching, there's a lot of itching there with the sneezing and with the upper symptoms of coryza, I would think of a drug called ambrosia. Ambrosia and we've used it because in the Bay Area in California, allergies are rampant because of all the pollen and the trees. So that's one of our biggest sources of income for most homeopaths, because you see so many allergy clients here. And ambrosia would be the remedy I would think of when a person comes to me with a lot of acute itching in the eyes with irritation and watering of the eyes. Now you might say that could be euphrasia too, but then euphrasia also has a few other important symptoms, like they have very acrid tears. It'll irritate the skin when the tears flow over the cheeks. It'll irritate and cause red streaks sometimes. It's that bad. And you'll have at the same time a nasal discharge which is bland. Euphrasia also has some qualifying modalities, like it's always better in the open air. and you'll also find there'll be a cough in euphrasia. And the peculiarity of the euphrasia cough is that it's always worse in the daytime and it's better at night. And so you have some other peculiarities which will make it very easy to look for euphrasia. Now, if the nose is the place where there's a lot of irritation, there's a lot of itching in the nostrils, itching inside the nose or at the back of the nose, then instead of ambrosia, I would think of a drug called Arundo, Arundo. Now, these are not rare remedies. As I've been always telling my students, a remedy is only rare because you haven't heard of it. The very fact that they were approved and they're part of the materia medica means they have been thoroughly investigated by some homeopath in the past. So a remedy is only rare because you don't know about it. Every remedy has equal status because each person demands a remedy depending on the symptoms. So Arundo would be the drug when you have a lot of irritation in the nose. If there's a lot of irritation in the throat, in the roof of the mouth, the palate, then I would give Vyethia. That's the spell Wyethia. At the same time, if a person comes with a lot of itching and irritation in the ears, nose, throat, and there's itching in the scalp, itching all over the body, then Sabidilla would be the remedy for that. And Sabidilla has violent sneezing. The sneezing is violent. The whole body shakes. In fact, sometimes they sneeze so loudly that the glass panes will start vibrating. So that's the intensity of the violence of the Sabidilla sneezing. So that's how you would possibly want to look at prescribing for acute states. I always feel that you should master acute prescriptions because chronic prescriptions, you have enough time. They have been having those symptoms for a very long time. They are patient enough to wait. But in the acute state, they cannot wait. You have to give them relief in the next few hours. So if you're a good master of acute prescriptions, you are a good homeopath. If you're a master of only chronic states, anyone can do that because you have enough time to sit back, repertorize, ask some people questions, some of your homeopaths, take their advice, and then make a prescription. But when it's sitting face to face with an acute state, you need to make a decision right now and make sure that the patient comes back to you in a different and a more healthy state. So you need to be able to make these acute prescriptions. Now you said nose blocks, for example. So nasal obstructions. Again, there might be some remedies which are very important for nasal obstructions like Sinapis nigra. It can be used because of polyps. It can also be used just because there's a hypertrophied turbinate. Usually the left side is affected. They are more affected and they get worse by evening. Compared to Sinapis, you have Sambucus nigra. Sambucus is a drug where you have a lot of nasal congestion. The child cannot breathe because of the nose being obstructed, and expiration also becomes very difficult. Bryonia is a remedy where you might find that the person has coryza, which is associated with the very important general symptoms of increased thirst for large quantities of cold water. They are very hot. You might find the right side seems to be flowing more. They can get headaches, which are again on the right side. So it makes it very easy for you to make a Bryonia prescription. But these smaller remedies, you need to study them well and plan your remedy depending on the acutes. Nux vomica, for example, is another remedy that is known for the nose blocks. And I think Nash has written that they have sneezing in the morning and nose blocks at night. So the whole night is spent choked. They cannot breathe. And they wake up in the morning and they start sneezing like Amon Carb. So Amon Carb and Nux vomica are very important even in the repertory for sneezing in the morning on waking. Now, Amon Carb, you can use the repertory actually to differentiate remedies too and to look at the remedy relationship. In let's take Kent's repertory, which is the simplest and the mother of all the other repertories before, because people have just expanded on that. So if you look at nose sneezing, waking on, sleep waking on, Amon Carb is the only remedy, 3 marks. And nose sneezing wakes him from is amon mute. So in the sleep, when they start sneezing, then the remedy is amon muriaticum. But after they wake up and they start the episode of sneezing, then the drug is ammon carbonicum. So both from the same family, both same group, the ammonium group, but the carb is after sleeping, after waking, and mure is within in the sleep. So early morning, before they wake up, they start sneezing, and that wakes them up. So that's how you should look at the remedies. Nux vomica, apart from the nasal secretions and the obstructions, it also has a dry cough. Our basic materia medica teaching when we were students, when we were in the first year and the second year of our homeopathy medical college, we are taught two remedies for cough at night. One is spongia and the other is drosera. Now, all that most people remember is spongia has aggravation before midnight and drosera has aggravation after midnight. That's the only thing they know to differentiate the two remedies. So a person comes to you with a cough which is worse after midnight, you end up as a routine prescriber, you will give drosera all the time, and it doesn't seem to always work. Why? That's the question I always ask. Why? Maybe because there was some other remedy that was indicated and you missed it because you have on blinkers. You're only looking at what you know and what you've been taught. So you don't look at other remedies that could be, or you don't know about other remedies that could be useful. Now, if you look at the repertory, cough, dry, midnight after, daybreak until, there's only one remedy. So all the time we think of cough after midnight is drosera, but there's only one remedy in the repertory, and that is nux vomica. There are two sub-rubrics under that. Worse lying on side, on the back, only one remedy again, nux vomica. Better by lying on the side. You're talking about how side to side, sometimes patients complain of nose blocks. So in this case, the cough is worse midnight after until daybreak. They're worse lying on the back and they're better lying on the side. And all those rubrics, all those three rubrics have only one remedy, and that is nux vomica. So what is the relationship between nux vomica and drosera? Since we always give drosera with dubious results, we need to know why and how we can substitute drosera and or give nux vomica instead of drosera. So if you look at any of your books of materia medica, even Allen's keynotes, if you look at the drug drosera, go down to the complements of the relations, you will find the only remedy given there is nux vomica. So you see, nux vomica and drosera are actually related. They are very similar to each other, but what the mind does not know, the eye does not see. So you missed it again. And what is the relationship? Nux vomica is mainly soric. So it's a soric remedy. You'll have symptoms which are more soric in origin. So you'll have acute colds, acute coryza, nose blocks, cough, and it's more of a dry cough. Drosera is more of a tubercular remedy. Drosera is one remedy which Margaret Tyler has said that only Kent and I know about this remedy. No one else knew about it till I have talked about it, because people only talked about respiratory, but it is a very important remedy even for tuberculosis, especially of the bones. Now, drosera in its sphere of action causes a lot of hemorrhages, and they end up getting epistaxis and hemoptysis. So they get nosebleeds and they cough with blood-stained sputum. So that's the tubercular miasm, bleeding, tendency to bleed. Plus you have the disease tuberculosis in the background. And the drosera cough is generally quite moist, loose, rattling, like you had in antimontar and amon carb and the other remedies that we talked about earlier. So when you have a dry cough, which is worse after midnight, you think of, and it's a soric remedy and a soric patient, that's when you should think of nux vomica. Drosera would be more for the tubercular person. It's more loose, more rattling. The drosera cough is better by cold drinks. That's a peculiarity. Most people, or you expect people to feel better when they take something warm, like spongia. Spongia is better by warm, and drosera is better by cold. There are two other remedies. that are also very important for cough better by cold. One is cuprum metallicum and causticum. So causticum, cuprum metallicum, and drosera are three remedies where you'll have a lot of cough, and every time they drink water, especially cold water, sips of water, the cough settles down. So that's how you would look at acute remedies, relationship with each other, and how you could prescribe in the acute state.
Well, I think that's absolutely fascinating, and there's so much knowledge there. And thank you so much for that. I mean, there's much more to talk about, and I think we will follow up with several more sessions, indeed, and we can cover much more. But yes, thank you so much. I love that. It's I believe I said to you in the podcast as well. For a moment, you know, I forgot in the podcast that I was the host, and I felt very much like my old days, you know, I was in the lecture hall, you know, listening. So the same has been the effect today. So I must thank you for that. It's really delightful.
I've been able to share some of what I believe strongly about homeopathy, and I'm passionate about teaching. So whenever you want me to come on your show, I'm always
Absolutely.
there. Thanks a lot.
Very soon we will organize another one, certainly. But Dr. Vijay Vaishnav, thank you so much for joining me all the way from California. And we will speak very soon indeed.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for calling me. Bye.
Thank you.
All the best. Take care.